Did you guys update Zoom, and does it tell you that does the robot woman say recording in progress?
Well, no, because I'm always setting up the recording, so I think I know it's recording because of that.
Right,
maybe? I don't know.
Recording in progress. She sounds like a robot.
Yeah.
So anyway, we watched The Birds this week.
Yeah, my choice was Alfred Hitchcock's 1963. The Birds.
Right, yeah. So
well, this was new for us, but yeah, you've seen it before.
Yeah, because I was raised on Hitchcock, but it means that I've seen like a lot. It's interesting. I've seen it so many times, and yet like obviously whenever I've watched it recently or more recently, it's kind of just been a bit more of a background thing. Like I tried to pay more attention this time because I feel like, yeah, you know, we need to discuss it. So it's about birds, guys.
Yes. About birds. And look, I've got an appropriate mug today.
Oh, that's so terrifying. Is it a pelican?
It's a pelican. Thankfully, there are no attacking pelicans in the birds, because I think that would have been horrific.
Oh, good. Yeah. So the premise is, so it starts off with, I'm going to forget all the characters' names. What's her name? Melanie Daniels.
Melanie Daniels.
Yeah. Melanie Daniels. So it starts off. So Melanie Daniels looks a little bit rich.
Prankster
Melanie Daniels.
Melanie Daniels, who needs a minor bird, walks into like a beautiful department store with exposed bricks up to like the second level, which is just full of birds in cages.
When have you ever been in a pet store with a mezzanine?
I know.
Ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. So she's there. She's like, she needs to pick up her minor bird, which we find out later is a gift for her aunt, and she's going to teach it swear words. But it's not there yet. And so she thinks maybe we should get the minor bird delivered to her house. But then the woman at the shop clearly is very put out by this idea that she should have to deliver a bird to someone. So I went, look, it's got to be here soon. I'm just going to go check up. So there is Melanie Daniels in the bird shop. Enter weirdly chiseled man.
Yes.
Mitch Brenner.
Yeah.
Oh, nailing this. And he wants to get some lovebirds for his sister's birthday. And he sees Melanie Daniels there and goes like, oh, she must work in the shop. But he knows she doesn't work in the shop, guys, because he has seen her before, but decides to play a little prank on the prankster, and asks her about birds, and she has no idea about birds, apparently.
No, exactly. This might be a lovebird. Isn't that a canary?
Yeah. No. And yeah, so it turns out that there was a prank that had to do with her, and a window ended up getting broken, but she didn't break the window, and he's a lawyer and he'd seen her in court.
Yeah, but not as one of the lawyers. It seemed like he just happened to be there.
Yeah.
And remembered her face and name, but then it turns out because her dad is part owner of one of the San Francisco newspapers, she's actually like she's famous. Like
she's a big deal. She is known. Yeah.
She's known.
So yeah, she gets compulsively yes ands.
Yeah, that's right. To the point where she ends up taking a canary out of a cage, and it escapes. But luckily, when it escapes, it just flies near the ceiling a bunch, until the older woman comes back out with what was going to be an update about her birds, and then freaks out at this canary. And then her and Melanie trying to catch the canary. Luckily, just lands in something that looks like a fruit bowl, and Mitch puts his hat on it and then just like picks up the bird and puts it back in the cage. So crisis averted. He doesn't have any love birds though, and they're going to have to deliver the minor birds. And then, so he leaves, and then she goes into like ultra creep mode. And I was thinking about, if the genders were reversed here, the rest of this story is a huge problem.
Yes.
She runs downstairs, looks at his number plate, rings up, I think, her brother who works at the newspaper, because she does refer to like daddy or something to this person, unless she's referring, like, I don't know, maybe she calls her dad daddy to everyone.
See, I didn't think it was her brother. I don't know. I just thought it was just calling someone and going, well, it's obviously me, because I mean, daddy would let me do this. Like, so yeah, I thought it was just that, because that was just how she was. Yeah.
Gets this person to basically get the information about this person from the number plate. So rings up what do you call it? Where do you get the Department of
Motor Vehicles?
Thank you. The Department of Motor Vehicles gets this information, then orders a couple of lovebirds on his behalf, collects the lovebirds.
Yeah, and it's all the same day, right? Like, it's very Or
it was the next morning, because that was
the next morning. So a very, very short space of time where she's like, right, this is what I'm going to do. This has to happen. He has to have lovebirds immediately.
Gets the lovebirds, goes to his apartment building to drop off the lovebirds by the door. There's like a strange man who's kind of lurking, who turns out that he lives there as well in this apartment building. Very conveniently knows everything about his neighbor's, like, I guess, actions and whereabouts. So as she goes to leave, having left these lovebirds by the door with what we find out later is quite an aggressive note, he's like, wait, he's not here. He always goes down to Bodega Bay for the weekend. I could look after the birds, but like, I'm actually leaving as well. Probably don't leave the birds out in the hallway all weekend. So she's just like, well, where's Bodega Bay? And they have like a bit of an interaction. So she fucking takes the birds and drives to Bodega Bay. And again, reverse genders. None of this is okay.
No. And also it teaches you a lot too. This whole story goes on about how, you know, essentially if you're a beautiful woman asking where people are, they'll just tell you.
And I know that it was a different time, but I still think for that time, like, this was it was questionable.
This sequence had one of my favorite bits of the movie too, because she drives really fast.
Yeah.
Up these winding roads. Yeah. So there's these two lovebirds in the cage swaying back and forth as this little convertible screams around corners, which I found very funny.
Yeah.
It was very funny because they literally had the birds do this.
Yep.
It was great. Yeah. So it very recklessly drives a nice little car down to Bodega Bay, gets there, goes into like what is the general store kind of thing.
Like it,
asks for, so knows that this person's name is Mitch Brenner and nothing else. And then basically this man tells her exactly where, goes out and points.
Like, there is the house.
How to get there. Because of course she's got the birds for the sister's birthday, needs to find out the sister's name because the guy thinks it's Alice, but the other person who works in the general store thinks it's Lois. So he is told to go and find the school teacher.
Which is also creepy. Go and hang out at a school and find out what a little girl's name is.
So goes to find, and then basically, so she does, and then also orders a boat. So I really like this. She's like, can you just order me a boat?
Not only does he tell her how to get there, she also says, I'd like to sneak up on them. And he says, well, in that case, go this way.
Yeah, don't take the main road. You could probably just go across the bay, but like you'll need a boat. And she's like, oh, well, I'll get a boat then. He's like, well, I'll order you a boat.
And he's like, can you drive these boats? Can you? Of course I can.
Obviously, rich people know how to drive every vehicle, especially like a little tinny, which is what it sort of ends up being. But before that, she then drives to the teacher's house, knocks on the teacher's door and says, yo, this, like, you don't know who I am, but like, I'm friends maybe with like what is the name of this small girl child? And the teacher's like, oh, here is her exact name. Although every time there's a mention of Mitch Brenner, this teacher makes a bit of a face.
Yeah, she does.
There might be a story there, guys. We might find out about it later. Yeah. I'm not sure. And so then finds out that the sister's name is Kathy. So she drives back, writes a birthday card for Kathy, takes her birds and a birthday card and her handbag, gets into the tinny and just like across the bay and then so she's almost at this house. So we're just nice, like smooth sailing in a little tinny, notices movement around the house as she's approaching, very astutely turns the motor off and starts creep paddling towards like the little jetty that they have.
And at this point we've had no birds, right? There's been really no birds to speak of.
No, there is. Right at the very start of the film, right at the start, when she's going to the pet shop, there's a lot of seagulls flying above, and there is a comment made about that. So that's right at the very, very beginning.
There's a bit of birds.
There's a bit about gulls. There are a lot of gulls, and it seems like a lot of gulls for this time of year. Okay. And then nothing. There's been nothing. Just the myna, the canary that escaped, and the lovebirds. That's been all the birds.
They're very cute lovebirds.
Yeah, they're lovely. I mean, lovebirds are adorable.
They're really sweet. So luckily, as she's creep approaching, they all just go into the barn. It's like a beautiful, like red American barn. Like, well, we've got Mitch there. He's just popped into the barn very conveniently. So she sneaks up, she ties it, she loops her boat up, she sneaks in. The door's open, as in unlocked. He's not in there. She's gone like, well, surely no one else could be in this house that doesn't belong to the man who's not in there. So just goes into the house, leaves the lovebirds, and then we see her place the Kathy card, and then there's the Mitch note, which she rips up, and we find out later on that
she rips up for the camera, kind of very for the camera.
Like, I'm not gonna leave this like angry note at Mitch. So leaves it for Kathy, sneaks out, gets back into the boat. As she's leaving, Mitch is coming out. So she paddles away. Mitch comes out of the barn. He goes in the house, obviously discovers these birds, runs out, goes like, who if there's no fucking cars? Who's put these birds here? Like, this is weird. Sees the boat. He runs back inside, gets binoculars, comes out, tries to. So her solution is to like duck down and then like very awkwardly try to restart this boat. So he sees that it's her and goes like, well, obviously she's going back to the other side of the bay. He jumps in her fucking car, drives around the bay. So by the time that she's meant to arrive, he's already there waiting. And then first bird attack. She gets swooped by a gull that seems to hit her here, but she's bleeding here. It must have been a very hard, like it was a heart attack because she's dazed. All of a sudden she's in pain. She's like, oh, it's like there's a lot of this for like a while. She's bleeding. Obviously he panics, oh my gosh, goes down, helps her. They go into like the local restaurant, and well, I really so that was Helen. They sent Helen away to get some cotton and some antiseptic, and he's dabbing in her little face, and then there's like a bit of a discussion as to like why she's there. Maybe does that happen in the restaurant? I think so.
Yeah, because she tells him that she's visiting her friend Annie,
the school teacher.
Yeah, she does a bit more compulsive ending.
Yeah. So she's like, no, I'm here. I was like, oh, should you come to see me or something? Was what
like, no, I was here anyway.
He's like, no, I'm here anyway. And I thought I would do this.
And you'd wanted the lovebirds for your sister's birthday. So like, I got you some lovebirds for your sister's birthday. Happened to be visiting my friend anyway.
And then he's like, you should come for dinner tonight.
Oh yeah, because the mother walks in too, and she looks angry all the time.
Yeah.
And so she walks in, and they agree, and she automatically suspicious of this blonde woman who's bleeding from the forehead, and he goes like, oh well, I've already invited her to dinner, even though he hadn't. But that's fine. And so and then she gets very like, oh well, I don't know, maybe like me and Annie have plans, who knows, like I might come. And he's just very like, we'll see you then, we're expecting you.
Yeah, and he's like, I'll come and pick you up from Annie's. And she's like, obviously doesn't really know Annie, so can't be picked up. No, I know where I'm going. I can make my
own way. And so then it turns out that, and so obviously she needs a place to stay that in the night, because she's not going to then go to dinner and like drive home. So it's insinuated that she's looked around for places to stay and there's nowhere to stay. And then very conveniently, Annie has a room to let, which I don't remember seeing when she first talked to Annie. Did they show you the window with the sign? No,
I don't remember now.
Anyway, so she goes back, and Annie's like, well, actually, I was intending to like lease it to someone for a little bit longer than a night. And she was like, please, I've been everywhere. Like, I didn't expect to stay. I need to stay. I've got like some overnight. Like,
it's like, where's your luggage? It's a paper
bag that just has a nightie.
Yeah.
The suggestion is all that's in the bag is a nightie, but nothing else.
She must have bought it, right? Like, she must have bought it.
She said she did. She said she bought it.
At there was like it was a funny name for like a department like obviously whatever the little store was, but she gets like that, but then like nothing else, just the nightie. Anyway, so then decide to stay. It comes out then? No, it comes out later that Annie had actually moved to Bodega for Mitch, because
that's after the dinner.
That's after the dinner.
So we go to the dinner. We don't see them having dinner. We see her playing piano.
No, so we see her arrive, and that's right, the chickens are important. So
yes, of course.
She's knocked on the door and she sees them all coming back, and they'd been to see the chickens because the chickens were not eating. And so they thought that like the guy who'd sold them the chicken food, like it was bad feed, right? So the mother rings up this guy being like, yo, my chickens won't eat. What's this feed like that you've fed? Like they're not sick. It turns out that this guy had fed different chicken feed to another person, and those chickens wouldn't eat either. So this suggests that maybe there's something wrong with the birds. And then we don't see them eating dinner, and then she's playing piano.
Playing piano beautifully. And also like, I mean, it's interesting too because the film is so quiet and there's not music. You've got like
speaking like that whole bit when she's like driving up north, it's very much just like the car and shots of her and her face, and there's just a lot of really beautiful visual storytelling.
But I feel like that's really like Hitchcock's thing, right? Like,
because it's super fucking intriguing. Like it's super, you're like, who the fuck is this woman and why is she doing these things?
She is, and also why are they accepting her so quickly? Because even the fact, so what I thought was really funny was, you know, I mean, I guess she did give her a gift, but Kathy goes over to hug this mysterious woman.
That's the greeting. Like, are you Melanie? Oh my gosh,
thank you so much. I mean, that's lovely.
Kathy, Veronica Cartwright of Alien fame, as a little girl, which I enjoyed very much.
You know what happened to me first? I was like, that's the woman in Invasion of the Body Snatchers. And I was like, wait, she's been in other stuff too. She was also, as you said, Alien. Also Cassandra Spender in X-Files. Like she's been in a bunch of things.
Getting scared shitless generally, like that's why I was really excited to see how scared she'd get of birds, and then, you know, her evolution to how scared she gets of aliens. So, you know,
I mean, understandable.
No, she did not disappoint. Good casting.
Yeah, and they nailed it. And so that's the greeting, like, thank you for my birds. And she's playing the piano. Kathy just like loving having her there, inviting her to the birthday party, which we find out is a surprise birthday party. And she wants her to stay, and she's like, oh no, I don't think I can, I have to get back to San Francisco. Question, comment, you can't invite someone to a surprise party. Like, if she doesn't know that she's getting the party, how can she invite?
Because she already knew. She was like, I know
she knew.
She knows it's happening, but
she knew it was happening, but like no one else knew that she was happening. As in, like, if she did, everyone else know that she knew? Because if they didn't know that she knew, then she couldn't be inviting people to a party she didn't know what was happening. As you can tell, this bothered me a lot. And I was like, Kathy, it's a surprise party. You're not meant to know. You do know. Do they know you know? Because if they don't know, you can't be giving, like, imagine if someone rocks up. Is this not the problem? Is this not the problem in the movie for anyone else?
No, I loved your fixation of that. Do you know what my fixation for the whole film was? What happened to the bloody Mina? Because she was told the Mina was going to get delivered later on that afternoon.
I did have that, actually, yeah.
All through the film, like, as scared as I got of all the things that happened eventually, like, what happened to the Mina?
I agree.
Did the Mina starve? Did it get given to the aunt? I mean, she couldn't have been given it straight away.
No, because the aunt wasn't back yet. I had the same thing, being like, okay, she couldn't leave the birds in the hallway. I think at one stage I went, yeah, what happened to the Mina? But then I figured she's rich and she's got a housekeeper.
Oh, that's good. Okay, thank you.
Otherwise, you're right, because she went to the effort to get this Mina, which is going to teach swear words to for the aunt, because I guess she doesn't like her aunt. And then it's just like, well, who's gonna? Yeah, exactly. Because then it's when she stays the extra days as well. And I was like, even if you thought you were going to leave it for like a day, now you've left it for several days. Like, are you going to get back to a dead bird? But yeah, so
she gets invited to a party.
Gets invited to a party, but says like, probably I can't come because I got to get back to San Francisco. So she bids them all farewell. She goes back to Annie's. But there was, oh no, that's right. Just as she's leaving, Mitch gets real antagonistic. You know, because you know how when she gets back to Annie's and she's like really pissed off, and it was because that's when he was like, did you actually come up here to see me? Like, blah, blah, blah. And there's the discussion because the mother knows of this woman because it was in the arrival paper previously.
Oh, yeah.
Excuse me, that in Rome the previous summer, she had fallen into a fountain naked, but she'd actually been pushed into a fountain fully clothed, but it was the rival newspaper who reported it like that. So the mother's like, I don't know about this girl. And he's like, I can handle her. But then he starts being a bit of a dick about that as she goes to drive away, and she gets real huffy.
She does get real huffy when she gets confronted with maybe some
yeah, and it's the first time you kind of see her a bit less in control, because what I quite enjoy about her character from the very start is just how confident, how brash she is, and how she's just like, this is what I'm doing, I'm off to do it. And that's when she's a bit like, no, this is not me, you don't know me, this is not me.
Yeah, exactly. So she goes back to Annie's, is a little bit huffy, they have a brandy. And it's at that stage that we find out that, Annie had actually moved to Bodega Bay for Mitch. She met him in San Francisco. It was like a little bit of a thing. Obviously, like, wasn't a thing anymore. Even though it wasn't a thing, she still wanted to be close to him because she didn't want to lose him as a friend.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, and then the phone rings, and then it's Mitch for Melanie, and has said, like, come to this birthday party. So she decides to come to the birthday party. So that's all good. Next day. And so then one of the other things that bothers me is she wears the same clothes for the entire time.
I know. Oh my God, I couldn't stop talking about it. I mean, I quite enjoyed the green suit, but I'm just like, you bought a nightie. I mean, to be fair, it was just supposed to be one night, but this woman keeps staying and just still has the same green suit.
Also, like, her face is great, her hair is great. I was like, I've seen no cosmetics, I've seen nothing. It's like, that's why it's like, you just bought a nightie. Did you not buy something to wash your face with? Did you not buy? It's like, you couldn't have just used like what's her face's makeup.
Well, that's the thing. I was just wondering if she was so bold that she was, because you know, she was so bold to go and say, I'm staying at your house. So maybe she, but then I was like, if she's that bold, maybe she could have said, can I borrow your t-shirt? Can I, you know, go to this party in your mini skirt? Like, I don't know, like, give me something.
And then all I could think of was like, does she not sweat? Like, is she like rode a boat at some stage in those same clothes? I was like, if that had been me for that many days, that green suit would stink by the end of it. But again, that's not.
And also, fortuitously, you know, she got hit with a gull and was bleeding, but apparently suit was okay.
Maybe she always keeps 3 or 4 of that suit in her car.
She could, like, you're right, Dave. She
like, given that character, like, I could believe that she would just be like that. Yeah, like, yeah, I've always got 6 or 7 of these suits on me at all times, just in case.
Like 100%. And so so it's the next day. We're at the party, and she's gone for like a little bit of a walk with Mitch, much to the disgust of Annie, who's spinning a child around and then stops to watch them like walk away into like the hills near the beach and give them like a real evil look before going like, yep, there you go, I'm pushing the child in the back.
With a jar of martini?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Martini.
That seemed like someone that you would hang out with, Sophie. I was just like, Mitch is your dude. Bring me a martini.
It was just like, it was amazing. Just literally like a jar. Yeah, that's right. So they're walking, they're having a little chat in the hills. We discovered that she's got a very bad relationship with her mother because her mother just up and left as when she was about 11. So we're getting to know each other a little bit better. And then
and also she doesn't want to drink too much because she is definitely going home that night. She's going home. So she will have a wee martini from the jar, but she's not drinking too much because she's going to drive. She is going to drive back, but he doesn't really want her to drive back.
But she's like, because that's when we find out that she does actually have jobs and she does things during the week, and a lot of those things are good. Like, she goes and she helps it. Was it one of them? Is it the airport where she helps travelers? Or something?
Yeah, I don't know. I lost the thread at that point. This is probably where my brain still went too far into, you can't stay any longer as well because the bloody mina. So, but she listed because there's this presumption because she's rich and a socialite that she doesn't do anything. But she's like, no, I have all of these.
Yeah, but she did sort of make a comment that, you know, that summer, that the infamous summer in Rome, all that stuff had kind of gone down, and then she went, look, maybe I need to be like a bit more of a responsible adult here. So it's like she came back, she's got those 4 days a week, she does good things for the community, and then Friday is her day where sometimes she goes to bird shops. And so then there's the suggestion that maybe, like, you know, they could see each other again. But then, guys, the birds come, and all of a sudden seagulls just start swooping at children, and people are screaming. And no, because it goes for, it's right, it goes for Kathy first. So she's got the blindfold on. And then the bird comes and swoops her, and she's like, hey, no pushing, because she thinks it's like another child. And then it turns out that some really pissed off seagulls. Havoc ensues. There are screaming children running everywhere. So they run down. So I love it. They've got their, you know, jar of martini in their glasses. They just throw it into the foothills in the the sand dunes, run down. They're saving children. They're inside, and then like
kids under arms and like
amazing. Yeah, exactly. And then they, you know, by the time they're all inside, they sort of turn around and all the birds have gone, and then you have this like very unfortunate shot of 2 like crying children, and I'm just like,
they kind of wander into frame. And
they're just like, and all I could think was like, I wonder what Hitchcock did to them to make them cry like that, because I just feel like he did a lot of things sometimes to make people act. And I was like, did he just like throw birds at them and then they started crying, and he went, work with that? And then anyway, and so that's
so this scene was particularly traumatic for me, Sophie, and I maybe said this to you before, because I have been attacked by seagulls, and it was incredibly traumatic. So I think I was about 14 or 15, and I went on holiday to St. Ives in Cornwall with my parents, and there are signs everywhere saying, don't feed the gulls, they're getting quite aggressive, don't feed the gulls. You're like, fine, whatever. So I had an ice cream cone. I was walking a little bit away from my parents and my brother and having a nice time, not really thinking about anything. And about 4 or 5 massive herring gulls flew down to try and get the ice cream off me. So I had 2 at my shoulder. I had one pecking on my head and another couple behind me. And I lost my shit. I absolutely lost my shit. And I like threw the ice cream on the ground. The gulls were ripping it to shreds. And I just burst into tears because I was so traumatized. So see, watching
perfectly fine reaction to that.
But I remember also, you know, that way, because I was 14, 15, like I was quite embarrassed that I'd gotten so upset. But I was also like so shocked because like I was a tall 15-year-old, right? I wasn't a small toddler. These gulls came at me. They saw that I was separated from my family and they could get my ice cream. And seriously, I just like, I was in shock. I was terrified. So seeing that, I was like, yep, gulls are bastards.
Yeah, well, I think any birds in a group that wants, like I told you, like the ibises at Macquarie, they would do this thing where you'd get, and they would only go for like younger looking women, and they would work in packs. So there's at least 2 of them. And what would happen is they'd be sitting there eating lunch, and one of the ibises would jump up on the table and flap, just like flap, and everyone would go and jump back. And as they would jump back, the other ibis would swoop in and steal the lunch, usually a sandwich, and then take it, and then the other one would go and they'd both eat it together. But yeah, like 100%, it's like birds are
just girl.
And then that reminds me of
literally
remember the kookaburra as well.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, Dave and I went to Launceston about 4 or 5 years ago, and we'd gone to this lovely farmer's market and got some cheese and bread, and we decided to just sit in the botanics and eat cheese and bread. And like some people had passed us, and they've got a cute little train that goes through the botanics and people touring about on it. And someone pointed out there were some kookaburras sitting behind us. Again, thought nothing of it. Now, kookaburras I love, but they do freak me out because they've got, you know, the big heads and big beaks. Chatting away to Dave, again, talking while eating, and it swooped down in front of my face.
And kookaburras are assholes. Even like by themselves when they're being innocuous, they're still assholes.
So yeah, I threw the cheese and bread on the ground, and again I didn't cry this time, but I was very shaken, and Dave just laughed at me, and I was like, look, I love birds. When they attack me or grab my food, I'm very traumatized. And you weren't there in Cornwall. It was really upsetting. I don't want a bird like at my face. No. So anyway, so
you could have very easily portrayed one of those children.
I could have, absolutely could have.
Like, I know how this feels, Hitchcock. You don't need to do anything terrible to me to make me react like this because it's already happened.
Yeah. So watching that was quite traumatic for me. But it was like they were doing like one per child though. So the fact that the seagulls were like, I can do this by myself too. There was a gang of them, but there were a lot of people. So.
And I thought like I was quite impressed with like all the bird attack scenes. Like this is 63.
Yes.
And they had done a really nice job with like the superimposing birds flapping and going crazy over like the actual footage, because you do get, it is a bit overwhelming when you're like, imagine if there were just that many birds flapping around everywhere. Like I thought they did, he did a nice job. So yeah, what happens is we've now established that, so the birds have gone, but then Mitch does convince what's-her-face to stay the night, stay for dinner, right? Because then...
Was roast
okay,
beef.
when did because that was that one thing we missed from last night, because they were like, this is the third thing that's happened. So the first thing was she got swooped by the gull. The second thing was the night before at Annie's house, there'd been like a smash at the door.
Of course, and the gull had landed.
The gull had hit it, and then this time, that's the birds have gone like a bit weird. Like, why are they doing this? This is the third thing that's happened. And he's like, I would feel better if you just like stayed for a meal, and then you can like drive home. So it's
a bit weird. Like, you don't leave hungry because the birds hate hungry people. Like, it's just, she needs to stay. But like, it was interestingly.
It was like, like
I would feel better if you stayed for a meal.
I would feel better if you left on a full stomach.
Yeah.
So she stays and they have a meal, and then they're sitting around the living room maybe for like coffee or something, and then
they're eating roast beef on the sofa.
They are, yeah.
I thought it was very casual for the period.
And then it just gets like real Harry Potter-ish, and rather than a lot of envelopes shooting out of a fireplace, it's sparrows. There's sparrows. They just come in and they go crazy, and all the stuff is breaking, and we're screaming, and then he tries to board it up with like a platter. Just the bit where he just like random object that is not the whole size of the fireplace opening in front of it, and it's just like this
cushion.
And
he opens some windows, which is maybe helpful, maybe not helpful. It's not clear.
And then they call the policeman, and he comes in and goes like, well, look, you had a light on.
Yeah, of course birds come in your chimney when your light's on.
When they're in enclosed spaces, they freak out. And he was like, yeah, true. But like a whole bunch of them came in through the chimney. And he's like, maybe put some mesh on the chimney. Like they just came inside and they freaked out. There was a light. And they're just like, yeah, but we've been living here for a long time. And like, this doesn't happen. And this cop was just very like, whatever.
Then they did highlight, like you said, that there were other things that happened. They'd already been attacked by seagulls. And she'd had a gull attack the first day. Like, the birds were going
like, look,
he's having fucking none of it.
It was like, you got lights on inside. Like, you haven't got a mesh over your chimney. Like, I don't know what you want from me, kind of thing. And then, so Melanie sees that obviously the mother is a little bit shaken and goes like, look, I think it'd be better if I stayed tonight. And he's just like, yep. So Kathy and her go to get her stuff from the car, which is a nightie.
Nightie again.
And so then like they sleep through the night. And then it was funny because it's like the suggestion was like if she left early, she could go to somewhere and she could get back quicker. And then like the next morning, the mother has already taken Kathy to school, and then you go drop off a farm on the way, and she's still in her nightgown. I was like, how are these people leaving the house before you're even out of the bedroom? You didn't get up early. What are you talking about? And so drops Kathy off, but then we follow the mother to this farm, and there's like the farmhand guy.
Yeah, so is this the person that sold her bird feed or someone?
I assumed it was the chicken feed person. So but I don't. So basically it was just like, oh, have you seen like Mr. Blah blah blah? And he's like, oh, I haven't seen him yet, but like he'll just be in the house. So she's like, no worries. Lets herself into the house. Notices first there are some there's broken china in the kitchen.
Yeah, this is what I also love. Like, so the cups that were hanging on the hooks, they were all still hanging. They were all just a bit cracked, even though the cups were still hanging on the hook.
Yeah, and that's like a throwback to when like the previous night when they had been attacked by the sparrows. A lot of like porcelain got broken, so we go like broken porcelain, maybe the birds. So she goes upstairs, and then she sees. I think first she sees the like half dead, like the dead seagull, like bloody in the window, like it had like smashed in and got like a little bit stuck and the stuff. And then she looks around, and then she sees the feet of this guy, and there's very bright red blood in this movie. It was the one that I was like, that's not what it looks like after that much time, but that was fine. So you see the legs, and then she looks in, and you see this guy, and he's kind of like sort of sitting lying up against the wall, and they've eaten his eyes out, which I think like a movie in 63 would be like a bit, that'd be quite shocking.
That, I mean, and it still for 64 now, that was still shocking. And when that, I was like, oh no, I don't like that.
And it does this great kind of snappy zoom thing, which is presumably a Hitchcocky thing that's been much since.
Because the other thing that I didn't mention, which I loved, which was Hitchcock does like a lot of like stuff at the front of the frame and like the back.
Yeah.
And there's the one bit where she's on the phone to Mitch, and Annie is sitting in the foreground, and it's just very like he does his one thing about like sometimes Hitchcock was a bit like strange and self-indulgent, but I feel like his camera angles and his framing of stuff is always like very nice.
Yeah, it's that like it happens several times, and like it's front and back of the frame, and there's several times like you say where there's a conversation on the phone happening, and it's either going on while a different conversation's going on, or the two are actually interacting with one another, like interrupting one another. Yeah. And it just gives like your attention is divided, and it just gives everything a sense of like movement, like all the time in the exposition. It's like in Terminator, where there's quite a lot of exposition to get through to explain like the time paradox, but it's all happening while they're like screaming around corners in a car. So you don't really notice that you're just being like spoon-fed the story. But same thing, like it's real, like it just gives the whole thing a kind of sense of urgency.
Important
information.
It was, yeah, it was really, and so that one, because I'd forgot, like I'd remember the guy was dead, but I'd forgotten actually how nice it was when then they pan to him, it's like boom, and it's his eyes, and then the mother does the most beautiful dramatic, like, oh, so like runs out, and she's literally kind of, they went run down the corridor like this, like you're distressed.
So you know how much we love like drama like that. You know, remember when we watched Nightmare on Elm Street and he was running with the wibbly arms and we had to wind it back? Yeah. So Dave and I had to wind that back again because her run down that corridor is just amazing. It's absolutely amazing.
She is a distressed woman. Mm-hmm. So she runs, and so the best thing is she runs out, runs past the farmhand, doesn't fucking say anything, just kind of looks at him, gets in the car. Love that, gets in the car, like drives back. Then we have like Mitch and Melanie, who are both still there, who should fucking be at work, but like, you know, they were just having like a little bit of a chat. They gets there, opens the car door, stumbles out of the car, and then sort of just starts crying against the car. And he's like, mother, oh my God, like runs over. Melanie runs over. She's sort of like crying for a bit and then just pushes them. I love it. Just pushes them out of the way and runs in. And then like, obviously like the story comes out. And they call the Santa Rosa police, the Rosa police, like,
which is so presumably like the nearest big town.
Yeah. And so then Mitch goes over to that's right, because the mother's in bed, is now tucked up in bed because she's traumatized, and then Mitch has to go to this farm, and then like Melanie brings the mother a cup of tea, and the mother's like,
was Mitch going to the farm, like this was the bit I got a bit confused too, was it in his role as a lawyer or something, or was he just going? Because it was like, oh, I need to go.
Strong man, Karen.
Strong man, is that all?
I mean, that's how I perceived it. I don't think it wasn't like explained. And then, yeah, and so the mother's like, oh, they didn't believe me. And she's like, no, they were fucking calling from the farm, love. Like, you know, we got it. And so then they're having like a little bit of a chat. And then the mother is like, she's saying that like, usually I'm a strong person. Like, I don't want to be so like weak. She was like very worried about the daughter. Basically, like straight up is like, I don't know if I like you, which I thought was a bit much. You know, she's like, I don't know anything about you. I don't know if I like you as a person. And it was just like, okay. You know,
I quite enjoyed that though as well, because from that film I was like, yeah, you've known her for like 2-3 days.
It's true.
And she let herself into your house to leave birds. I mean, yeah. Who the hell are you?
Your son from San Francisco to your house for your daughter.
And now you're staying in my house and there's all these birds and what the hell is going on?
So then, you know, so then there's a suggestion that we have to go get Kathy from the school because she's just quite worried because of course, like all the birds came in through the window in the farmhouse, and like the school has just got these massive windows. So like, you know, she's like, I'll go get Kathy. And then she's like, okay, thank you for the tea. And so she goes to get Kathy, and as Kathy arrives, they're singing what is kind of like, I love this song. They're just singing this like weird song with nonsense words, and
it's like, we can't possibly interrupt this because they're singing this jolly song.
And like, the teacher's kind of like, we're just singing the song, just like, just wait. So she goes outside, completely unaware of what's happening behind her. So she sits down, she has a little cigarette.
That's dark.
She's got like the jungle gym thing behind her, and then like a bird appears. And then another bird appears, and then another bird appears, and she's just having a fag. And then eventually
suddenly surrounded by crows.
Notices a bird and turns around, and it's just like, you know, a scene from The Birds, as they would say, where it's just crows just all over the playground equipment, and she's gone, fuck. So she reels.
That's an amazing scene, I have to say.
So
see, when you're like, you turn around, there's like a couple of crows, then there's another couple, and then you turn around, there's like,
and it's just like all crows, and it's
that's really well done.
Big, right? Crows are and so it's like, you know, so then she goes back into the school, and they're finishing. Oh no, that's right. And that's the bit where that song becomes creepy, because as she's walking back to the school, you've got there's a scene of her walking, you've got like that, the jungle gym covered in the birds, and then that weird like kind of nonsense word song suddenly becomes creepy and foreboding. Like it's the same song, nothing has changed, and it's just like you can just hear it in the background, just walking back, and like genuinely I was like, oh, this is like, I just thought it was like, that's probably one of my favorite bits in it, where I'm like, all of a sudden everything is really unsettling right now, to the backdrop of these children like singing this like fun little song that was fun like 20 seconds ago. Now it's like, oh god. So she goes back in, they're all about to go out for recess, and she comes in and is like, Annie, close that door, get a load of this. And Annie's like, fuck, okay, so kids, we're gonna show Melanie how great we are at fire drill. these kids seem super disappointed that they're leaving school, which didn't make any sense. They were just like,
Yeah.
oh, and it's like, we have to go home. And I was like, what is wrong with you? Like, you're getting an early minute. And then they're told to walk quietly and quickly away until they say run. And then they are to run, which I feel maybe we should have tried quickly and quietly for a longer period of time before we screamed and ran. And then you see the birds get startled and then they chase the children, and there's a lot more swooping. And I reckon the second kid that gets attacked was one of the crying kids from the birthday scene. And I was like, that poor Ginger, she just keeps going.
I did mention to Dave, I'm like, oh, the Ginger's going to get it. The Ginger's going to get it.
And then the kid with the glasses, and so she gets knocked to the ground by the birds. The glasses smash. She calls out for Kathy, because of course we need to bring Kathy back into this. Kathy goes to help her. Melanie comes, grabs them. So the bleeding, no glasses child and Kathy and Melanie then go into, I think it's Melanie's car. But she doesn't have the keys.
I thought it was a random car. I thought it was just a random car because
that way then when she went to do this, there were no keys in it, and she was just like, no one left their keys in.
And also because it had a roof up, because what Dave kept commenting on was her car with its her questionable choices about leaving her car with the roof down. Dave also thought was entertaining. So I don't think that was
so just a car, and then basically the birds dissipate while the rest of it, because the kids were given the instruction if you're near your home, go home, otherwise go down to the restaurant. And so the birds have dissipated, where then it's Melanie in the restaurant, calling her father first. Is she talking to her father first?
Yeah, because I think they're telling the news story. So it's this is what's happening down here.
Yeah, and I love it where she's like, no, I'm not being hysterical. I'm trying to tell you this in the most rational way I know. And I'm just like, of course he just assumed she was being an hysterical woman, just straight off the bat. It's like, Dad, just fucking telling you a story about birds attacking people. Just chill out for a second. Don't assume it's because she's a hysterical woman. But anyway, chatting there, and there's Kathy is just hanging out at Annie's house. She calls Mitch at the farm. Mitch is going to come down. And then there's this discussion about what is happening with the birds. And there's this crazy old woman ornithologist being
I loved her.
Birds don't attack people.
No, I loved her because I was like, she just knows the birds. She knows the birds. She's going to tell you this is just nonsense.
This is nonsense.
You have to provoke them. Birds don't just attack.
Because it was interesting. What did you think they were doing? Oh, they attack the children. Why?
Yeah.
And it's just look, it's a really good question.
Yeah.
And then
the doomsday.
We've got the drunk Irish doomsayer in the corner.
Yeah,
we're all gonna die.
Just being really helpful. And then you've got the mother with the two kids being you're scaring the children.
Yeah, please be quieter.
And then you've got the guy who's like, no, just kill them all. They're filthy animals. Just kill all the birds.
And that was the guy drinking who's like, because that wasn't the woman with the kids was just you're not listening to the woman who's saying that birds attack the children. I'm getting my kids the hell out of here. I don't know how to get back to the highway. And he's like, I'll take you. I've just got to finish my drink.
I know. And then there was in there as well. There was also the guy who said, no, this is a thing, because was it the gulls had capsized his boat or something? And that was again when the ornithologist was like, well, obviously because you had fish in. So they want the fish. So of course
being logical. What are you talking about?
Yeah. And he's like, no. This was weird. Again,
the super gruff masculine seaman.
Yes, it's I fish a lot. Birds do not capsize my boat.
And so then Mitch comes in, and then I think so the mother with the kids leaves with the drunk man who wants to kill everything, but he's going to show them the way of the highway in his car, and then. He gets swooped by, is it him who gets swooped by a bird and end up exploding the petrol station?
Well, I don't know if it was him, but they look outside and there's just some random dude filling up his car, and they're like, shit, it's happening again, because a bird goes to swoop it, and so the bird's swooping this guy, and then he falls down and drops the petrol pump.
And there's another guy who's got it, he's lighting his cigarette, and they're just like, stop, and then
Sorry, this is one of those ones where so Hitchcock's obviously really influential and he does some really good things, but this was this shot made me laugh really, really hard. There's this weird shot where the thing gets lit on fire and then the fire spreads, but the fire spreads and it's intercut with several shots of Melanie's face where she's looking alarmed in a different direction. And it's
Yeah.
It's so good.
Yeah. And I get what they were going for, but it was just
very funny.
Quite funny.
Yeah, very funny.
I really like, because I think it's before then the birds start, because then people go outside and they start attacking, but there's the bit where, is it when this thing has gone up in flames, or it could be at the very end of the scene, and they cut back and it's this like above shot of like everything on fire, and there's just some fucking birds being like, we did that. It's like the way they fly past being just like, yeah,
it was me.
They're mates. And so basically they, like, all hell breaks loose. People are outside, like the birds are attacking and swooping again because they've caused this fire. They've exploded a petrol station. Melanie is outside so that's like one of like the very famous scenes. Like she's in the phone booth, and then it's just and she's just looking around, and she can see all the stuff in the safety of her phone booth. Some guy comes up, bloody getting attacked. She doesn't even like attempt to open the door to let him in. No. She just watches this man getting attacked right in front of her. Like, again, we've got the really nice red visceral blood. And then she like sort of tries to get out at some stage, and she can't because the birds are pushing. Anyway, Mitch comes to the rescue, grabs her. They're back in the restaurant. Their restaurant's empty. And then they walk around, and there's just women and children sort of like hiding down a corridor. And then the suggestion comes out that like, hey, they said none of this shit had been happening until you fucking arrived. As if you arrived and the birds went mental, you're a witch, basically.
Yeah. And like, I had a moment when they were doing that where I'm like, oh, is this going to turn into a thing of because she brought birds in a cage and she's caging birds, that the birds are like, I was trying to rationalize why she might actually have been the problem. And I was like, well, I mean, you know, she thinks birds should be in a cage. And because they'd had that chat at the start where Mitch had said to her in the pet shop that keeping birds in a cage was a bad thing to do, I was trying to rationalize all of this going, maybe she is the problem. But no, they were like, you are a witch, you are a witch.
So she made all this stuff happen.
And we get told that very convincingly, because this woman's kind of losing her shit going, you're evil, you're terrible, and Melanie's having none of it. Gives it a scalp.
Yeah,
across the face.
What I loved as well is like, I feel like that shot has been used in a lot of things, not the slap one, but the one where she's coming towards the camera, she's got crazy eyes, and I reckon we saw that in Village of the Damned. Like, there's a bunch of movies that like we've seen that in now, but yeah, I love it. She's gonna do like a thwack.
No, fuck you.
Hysterical. Not and so then the owner of the restaurant, he runs back in and says something. They end up leaving to go get like Kathy, right? Because Kathy.
Yeah, because I think it's quieting down.
Yeah, like all the.
So it was like, go now while you can.
Suggested at some stage that there's a bit of a pattern where basically the birds will amass, and then they'll attack, and then they'll disperse, and then like there's like a bit of a cycle. So then they'll so it's like the birds they're fine right now. Like, get the fuck out, go get Kathy at Annie's. Somehow Mitch got from the farm to the restaurant not in a car. So they're walking in the land of the angry birds, which seems like a little bit reckless to me. And the best thing is like the birds are still amassing. So they're just like walking like really slowly up to Annie's, and they're just like looking around, and there's just fucking birds everywhere. And I'm like, one, I think you should be in a car. And two, it is interesting how sometimes there are lots of birds and they don't do anything. And sometimes there are lots of birds and they do something, and this really seems to be dependent on where we are in the story as to if we're ready for another bird attack rather than anything else. And but we approach and we notice that Annie is on the ground, bloody and fucked up. And so he's all like, so says to Melanie, wait here with all of the birds, I'll go check this out. And then like goes over, she's all fucked up. Annie still kind of Melanie still kind of screams and runs up, and I'm like, I thought we like no like quick movements near the birds, but sure. And then goes like, where the fuck is Kathy? Kathy is inside, traumatized, absolutely fucking traumatized, because basically she just like saw Annie get attacked to death by birds from the safety of Annie's house.
And as I say, this gives us a cue to how great she's going to be being traumatized when we get to Alien. Like
Veronica Cartwright.
She's just
so
all
like, over the film.
Oh, this is awful. And you're like, yes, it is. This is horrendous.
Yeah, and so then they go, and then we end up back at the Brenner house for like, so it's like, you know, kind of the final bird scenario. So we're hammering up things, hammering up the windows, like all this kind of stuff. There was a bit where so then they're all gathered in the living room Kathy wants to bring the lovebirds into the living room because they haven't hurt anyone, and the mother is like, you are fucking crazy, they can't come in here. So like, you know, again, now we have a fear of all the birds. And there's one bit where they break through a window. And he, like, that's when he gets all like messed up in the arm, right?
Yeah, it's like, I don't know, I was trying to understand what was going on, because it was almost like the windows had shutters, those ones had, so he was trying to close it because he hadn't remembered to do that one. After all of the boarding up all the windows, there was one he clearly missed, so he was trying to like close that, and the gulls were attacking him, and then he eventually did manage to get it closed. But they could, all while that's happening, there are other birds trying to peck through a flimsy door.
We have a bit of an attack scene, and then I really like it where he's bleeding, whatever, and then Melanie goes to help him, and he just pushes her away because he gets a rag on his hand. He's being mad. It's like, woman, no, I'm dealing with the birds. So there's that scene. So then we're all a bit traumatized, but now we're sleeping.
What I enjoy is, so you say you push the women away. What I also like is once he's sort of secured it, and then he goes and he nails a cabinet to the door where the birds are probably going to get through.
Yeah.
And then he puts his women in places. So like, his sister is with his mum. So he like puts her in a chair, and he puts his mum in a chair, and they're together. And then he puts Melanie in a chair. So he's like, here you all are.
These are your birds safe. Do not move.
And you're right. And then they all are kind of traumatized but crash out. But Melanie doesn't. Well, she wakes up hearing.
She wakes up and she hears birds, and she's got so she hears the flapping, and she's like, uh-oh. So she does try to rouse Mitch.
Not very hard though.
Not very hard.
I don't so this is the whole sequence. I get it, because like her on her own, this is terrifying, but you're also just like, what are you doing, mate? You know, birds are scary, birds are attacking, you can hear, although maybe she didn't just think it was one or two.
But it's like, you've literally seen dead people because of birds. And then she goes, Mitch, he's fast asleep. He's very tired from being a very strong man. So she goes, I will go upstairs by myself to investigate the sound of the flapping. And then she goes into like a bedroom or something, goes in there, and then like shuts the door.
Yeah, interesting.
Behind her, and so this is apparently the scene where they had birds on, like, they like tied birds to her or something, like they're real, like it's the one where
so I was reading about this because there were a couple of things. This poor actress had a terrible time. So this was like her debut. So
Melanie Griffith's mother.
Yes. So I read that the phone box scene, she'd already been traumatized because the glass had actually smashed and given her an injury.
Yeah, that's right.
So she'd had a bad time there. And then when they were doing this scene, what I read was she was told that all the birds that were in there were going to be like fake, like your animatronic, whatever, I don't know, but that's what she was told. And then when she went in there, they were actually real birds, and like you were saying about, they were getting thrown at her.
Yeah, they were throwing real birds at her.
She was getting real birds thrown at her.
These birds going, fuck, like this is not what I signed up for. Like, yeah.
And so she then had a bit of a nervous breakdown, understandably. And so, but again, I was like, for a week or something, it said the production stopped because she'd had such a bad time. But yeah, so no one told her she was going into this room and the birds were going to be real. And not only that, as you're saying, they were thrown at her. Yeah. So these real birds that they brought in to work on this set were flying at this woman. Yeah, horrendous, absolutely horrendous.
So she's just getting fucked up by these birds, right? You said like real birds are getting thrown at her, and in the movie, these birds, like, you know, then she's like on the ground, they're pecking at her, they're scratching at her, but then Mitch, I think, hears her. I think, does she scream, or like it's just the bird sound, whatever? He hears her open, like she's like semi-slumped against the door. He kind of opens her, moves her out of the way, and then just like drags her, bloodied and fucked and unconscious, like out of the room, closes the door, like carries her down the stairs, and the mother is something weird, like, oh, poor dear. And it's just like, did we not? It was very strange. She is now like catatonic. So, you know, they've got, I like, the thing was he told the mother to go get like bandages and hot water or something, and then told this child to go get brandy. It was just like, you go get this, child, go bring me the alcohol.
Yeah. And the other thing, I guess, that we missed, and how, like, I guess there was one bit that made it so traumatic when the birds were breaking in, was also their power went out.
Yeah.
So earlier on, they were listening to radio, and they were getting frustrated because the news coverage of the bird attacks was not as great as it should have been.
It was very superficial.
What is this?
Yeah.
Sure. And then the power went out. And then basically, so this brings us to your scene now where you know, they've got no power, needs care, and he's like, right, I need to get her to a hospital, she needs to go to the doctor, so let's go and get the car. I'm going to take her car because our truck's going to not be fast enough, it's not going to do the business. And his mum had said, see if you can get on the radio too, that might give us more information. So that alludes back to what you were saying before about when the birds might attack. So what
they say it on the news,
on the radio in the car is that they attack in waves, and then they'll be quiet. So so Mitch is trying to get the car out, but then so he opens the garage door, right, and that's when you see that there are just seagulls and crows everywhere.
I like the bit where
like
when he first walks out of the house as well, and it's like he puts his hand on like the top of the rail to like walk down the steps, and there's a crow that just like bites his knuckle, and it's just kind of like, dude, I'm sitting here, like it just really annoyed with him. And so
I think that was also the bit of the film where you were like, this would have been a nightmare to film. When Dave saw that amount of birds, I was like, just think of all the shit.
There's so much bird shit and everything.
So much bird shit. Yeah. And so then it's like, and then we go back in and she's been bandaged up by the mother, and it looks like she's got a pad, just like an actual like menstrual pad just taped to her head.
And then it's like
I am disabled, like I have been like disabled by injury, bandage on.
And finally that green suit has started to have a rough time, so it's got some like blood and mud and whatnot, so she's a bit disheveled.
And so and then they get in the car, and then I like the bit with with Kathy is just like, can I bring the lovebirds, they haven't hurt anyone. And in the beginning, because it's like, again, I've seen it a bunch of times, and I was like, you really want to antagonize the birds? And then they walk out and I was like, oh, you've got a thing over the top of the cage they can't see. Like for a second I was like, you're gonna make them angry, and I was like, you've seen this, you know that nothing happens now, stop freaking out. And then they get into the car, and she's like slumped against the mother in the back, Kathy's at the front with the lovebirds, and then
they have a little moment, Kathy, what's her name, Melanie, and the mom, they have a little moment where she's never had the love of a mother really, and mother doesn't really know if she likes Melanie, and they have a little moment where they really connect.
And then it cuts like the best shot in any movie that I've ever seen, where it's just like them driving away, and it's just like all the birds, and it's like dark, and then there's like bits of light, and it's just such a pretty but like terrifying final shot.
This wave of birds that like move out of the way, and it's probably like there's the birds in the foreground, but then there's even more birds further away that kind of move away in this wave, and as the car drives past,
and then that's it.
And
it just ends. And apparently, again, so I was reading, because I was getting really into this, because obviously the birds traumatized me because of the gulls. But there were so I don't think from what I read, Hitchcock even wanted that ending. I think he just wanted birds and then done. Like he didn't even want the final closing that this is a film. But some other things that they've been considering doing were flicking to like, was it Golden Gate Bridge or something? I don't know, but like having birds just everywhere. But that was going to be too expensive. And then there was also, they were speculating maybe they'd have them driving away and birds attacking the car. But that was going to be expensive. But I think actually the way it ended was just much more powerful, just like they're all here.
So they're leaving and the birds live here now. This is their new home, and you have because when they were on the radio, when he managed to get this thing on the radio, the suggestion was that basically everyone except like a few pockets of people had got out of Bodega Bay. So it's like, this is the birds' house now. And I enjoyed it as much as I do every time I watch it. I think it's one of the good Hitchcock ones. I think there's a lot of good Hitchcock. I think there's like a lot of, now I'm just making movies for the sake of it, and I'm not trying as hard because I don't have to. But yeah, really, I liked it. I enjoyed it still.
Yeah, I liked it. And I think, so again, I was reading about, so it's based on a short story from Daphne du Maurier. So apparently, basically birds attacking and the name is it, but apparently the book's actually set in England, and there's a reason the birds start attacking, and it sounds like it's more of like a climate change kind of discussion, because basically humans have been shit and ruined the environment, and so there's no bird food now, like there's nothing for them to eat. So again, I've not read the story, but this is what I was reading about the story, and so my understanding is the author, she didn't really like the film because it wasn't really big. So the book is about the birds are attacking people because like they need a food source, whereas I think in the Hitchcock one, what's interesting is, like you don't know why they're attacking, and I think that makes it even more terrifying. I don't know, like I don't know, I've not read the story, so maybe the story having this whole element of, well, we're actually going to eat you because we are hungry, is also terrifying. But I think the other thing for me is the choice of birds, like crows, sparrows, I don't know, but I think the fact that sparrows don't seem so scary, but if you had a fuck ton of them, that is terrifying. But gulls and crows, like, they get a bad rep anyway, but they're quite creepy.
I was gonna say with the sparrows, we used to have these, I think they were actually like little willy wagtails or whatever, but like at high school, like when you would approach, you'd have to walk across the oval to get to the main part of the school, depending on where you came from. And there would just be these ones, and they just shoot the ones that are going like really low. And so you'd be walking and these things would just be swooping around. It's like they had no interest in you and you were just getting in their way. But like there is a little bit of the thing, it's like if you're walking and then, yes, a tiny bird or lots of tiny birds, but like moving at insane speeds and just like swooping down past you, and it's just something like a bit, so I think that the sparrows were more disturbing for me, because I was like, that's used to happen when we tried to get into high school, but it's like a room of them. But yeah, I think they I thought all the birds were pretty.
Well, we also, like Dave, I think Dave's comment was about if it had been in Australia. This is just Australia in spring with the magpies, right?
Yeah, it's basically it's the same phenomenon. I kind of felt like because we don't get an explanation about the birds attacking, it's probably, the film's probably not about that. And the film it kind of brought to mind for me was The Mist.
Okay, sure.
Which is like much more overtly post-apocalyptic, but and grim, but is kind of about what people do in disaster scenarios. And because we get this big long setup of these strong characters, and then we have that scene in the diner where we've got everyone talking about what it means, everything from doomsday predictions to rational scientific discourse. I think it probably is kind of more about how people behave when things go really to shit, with the main focus on this one family, where at the end they're all kind of driven together by it. This kind of disparate group of people with like quite a weird setup where you've got a mum and quite an old, like fully grown man and quite a young daughter, and then this woman Melanie who's really, really confident but kind of damaged in this fundamental way, all kind of thrown together and all kind of forced by this situation to become a family.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting, we keep talking about Mitch being the man, right? But like what I did actually quite like about this film was the fact there were so many women. Like actually, other than Mitch, the characters were all women, and
basically, except for like every so often a dialogue with like the voice
with like an odd
whatever.
But like I really liked how they all came across too in it, and that even though
Annie was the best. I forgot how much I fucking loved Annie. She was just real, like, I don't know, there's something about Annie that I was like, great.
So I thought the women characters in it were fantastic, and even though Mitch the man was helping a lot of the time, like they were still going in there and getting involved and dealing with things that were really horrendous.
Mitch was almost the least, once the birds start attacking, he becomes the least interesting character, because he becomes the man who does the thing. Who does the stuff. He just becomes the defender of the family, and that's it.
And the other thing, like, we're talking about things that bother you, like, so mine was like what happened to Permina, but the other one was just like try to work out what age this mother was with like an 11-year-old daughter and a son who, I mean, to me looked like he was way in his 30s. So like, I was like, how old are you? And also it was that thing of she had quite a young face, and I'm like, if you just like given her grey hair to make her,
she had quite a young face, and just like a conservative hairstyle that was grey, and that made her old.
But other things, so I did like the film. Other things I quite enjoyed that I was reading about it was that so the reason it was set in Bodego Bay and that the main character was called Mitch was because, so a lot of the scenes were kind of set up, but they actually did use a real restaurant that they wanted to use, and it turns out the owner of the restaurant was a dude called Mitch, and he basically said, yeah, you can use my restaurant, this is fine, come and do it, but you have to have the film set in Bodego Bay, that's where his restaurant is, and you have to have the main character, the dude's called Mitch. And again, I mean, this was probably Wikipedia findings, so don't necessarily quote me on this, but like I quite enjoyed that too. That seemed
I'd do that if I was like lending my restaurant to be in like a Hitchcock movie. But like, you can have it, but here are my conditions.
And I think he also, the owner of the restaurant, has a cameo in it. earlier on, as does Hitchcock, because Hitchcock does that. So Hitchcock, right at the start of the film, at the pet shop, he's walking out the pet shop with his own two dogs. So yeah,
he always has to do his little Hitchcock thing.
But yeah, so other than there were clearly some really problematic things, both behind the scenes, both of the birds, and also there has been some controversy and discussions about just how Hitchcock was with his lead actress, and yeah, that's all quite upsetting.
I thought it had dated reasonably far. Some of the sequences had dated to the extent that they broke my immersion a little bit.
Yeah.
Like when the school attack happens, there's some bits where the birds come down and the birds are kind of black cartoonish shapes. This was not a film that was ever meant to be watched in HD resolution.
I don't believe it was me. Although you know that there's like a couple of movies that Hitchcock shot stereographically. So like when I watched that, I went to see they'd done basically 3D Dial M for Murder, because apparently when he shot it, he'd shot it in a way that if they knew what they were doing, they could turn it into a 3D movie. And someone went and got the stuff and then made it into a 3D movie, and it was fucking sensational. But like I feel like so he's like, you can make it 3D, but like this can't be better resolution than what we have right now. Source friends. But,
and I think you're right. I think for me, the more ominous parts were before birds were attacking, like, you know, when they were just like, so like that scene outside the school with the crows all starting to the jungle gym. Like that's more terrifying.
Child song,
but yeah, I think as well, it's reading it, they did win some awards or were nominated for awards for the effects, because they got someone from Disney to assist with that, with all of those scenes.
Yeah, because I'm sure for like 63, like that would have been
we're
talking movie to watch.
Yeah, we're talking 50 years ago.
Yeah.
But as I say, I did enjoy it, and I did get sucked in. But you're right. I think the bird attacks were probably the bits that. I mean, I think the most horrific bit regarding the attacks was actually the dude with his eyes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was
horrifying.
Where it's just
But the birds attacking themselves, probably not so much. But still, like, to get them to have to work with that many birds as part of your cast is very brave thing to do.
Yeah, 100%.
All right, so Sophie, I think it's your turn for next week. So
Google Drive.
I have your list up here, but I mean, you obviously don't have to pick from your list, but yeah.
Let me have a look.
Oh dear.
I think you've got some older ones again too, like House on Haunted Hill from 1959, Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
Okay, what should we do?
Or do we want to go more modern? I don't actually, a lot of the films on your list I've not heard of. Like,
whereas I think I put a bunch of, because you'd said you hadn't seen that many older ones or that many foreign. So I remember at one stage I just put up like a bunch of old and a bunch of foreign ones. So House on Haunted Hills, black and white. Oh, have you guys seen? I mean, if we want like a scary one, I feel like I put The Strangers there because that's one of the newer ones that like I still think is genuinely, you know, I think we've discussed before, like a lot of new horror, it's just like overproduced and boring, and you think you're meant to jump now, but you're not going to, and then the scary thing is happening in 5, 4, 3, 2, and then there's the jump scare and you're like, whatever. Whereas I feel like The Strangers is just, so that's the it's got like Liv Tyler and Scott Speedman or something, and it's the one with the people in the, like, you know, the house that's far away from everything else, and they're getting like the creepy people with masks like knocking on the door, and then it just like descends. But I feel like that's the one that I watched with Dad, and we both a couple of times both like, oh my God, like it was, I feel like that one holds up in terms of, I say it's new, it's not that new, it's like, I don't know, probably 10 years old now, but like that's, if we want like a scary one, I feel like that one genuinely scared me. The other ones, The Lodge, I remember telling you, was one that I saw at the movies before, like maybe the first lockdown last year. And it's the one where I think it's like I don't know if it's great, but like it's quite an interesting premise. And again, that's kind of like a, what do you call it? Like a little cabin isolated is the word I'm looking for.
Isolated.
A little, oh my gosh, like a little isolated cabin thing. But then basically Invasion of the Body Snatchers, The Innocents, The Children, The Bad Seeds, The Tale of Two Sisters is a foreign one. But then Four Skulls of Jonathan Drake and Rasputin the Mad Monk are all old ones. And so old is like, I would say, not scary.
So how about we do The Strangers or The Lodge? Do you have a...
No.
Because they're both newer.
How about we do The Strangers, given that you've set us up for being afraid? So
and I wonder if it's still, and I'd be interested to see if it's having, I mean, because I have not seen it for a long time, so I just remember like vague things about it. But as I said, that was one that if it made like me and Dad both jump at a couple of stages, I feel like they've done well.
Okay.
We're both a bit desensitized maybe. So that could be, we could do that one.
All right, Strangers for next week then.